We lived less than a wall apart. But the distance between our trust was as deep as the Bali Sea. Raka had never been a man of suspicion. He believed in tides, in kindness, in the warmth of familiarity. The sea taught him that. It was both unpredictable and loyal, crashing against the same rocks every day as if keeping a promise only it could understand. He was 34, a tour guide for visiting tourists who came to Bali in search of sunrises and healing. He took them to hidden beaches, whispered stories of the gods into the wind, and taught them how to float on waves like they were part of the ocean. Then he came home, to a room he shared with his wife Ayu in a rundown cluster of rental rooms lined like shoeboxes near the southern coast. Their room was small, functional, a mattress on a low wooden frame, a standing fan, ceramic tiles that stayed cool even in the peak of summer. The walls were thin, made of old plaster and bad decisions. You could hear everything: arguments, laughter, coughs, pots clanging, toilets flushing. Privacy was a myth here. Everyone knew it, no one complained. Ayu, his wife, worked at a spa nearby. She was gentle, reserved. Her laugh had a flicker in it, like something cautious, like she'd been laughed at once and never forgot. They'd met 4 years ago. Her eyes had reminded him of the water before a storm, dark, mysterious, but honest. They didn't have much: a shared scooter, a beat-up rice cooker, a tiny altar to her ancestors near the window. But it was theirs. Raka had convinced himself that simplicity, if anchored in loyalty, was enough. At night, the sound of the sea would mix with the murmurs of the block. Sometimes someone sang karaoke, sometimes it was just the distant hiss of frying garlic. Other times, when the waves were still and the world unusually quiet, the noises from the room next door, his cousin Ardi's room, broke through with unsettling clarity. He told himself they were nothing. It's just how things sound when walls are made of air. The first time he noticed something was off. It was small, a pair of women's sandals outside Ardi's room. Brown straps, floral stitching, identical to Ayu's, but that didn't mean anything. Lots of women owned that brand. Maybe Ardi had a guest, a friend. Raka didn't knock. He didn't want to be that man. Then came the late-night showers. Ayu started bathing at midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. The sound of water running wasn't new, but the timing was. When he asked, she said she felt sticky from work. Needed to wash off the massage oils. Fair enough. The spa used thick, fragrant balms that clung to the skin. But the bathroom breaks stretched longer, and she started taking her phone in with her. She'd laugh, sometimes, whisper. He'd knock. She'd say, just scrolling through reels, nothing important. Raka believed her, not because the explanation made sense, but because he didn't want to carry the weight of doubting someone he loved. They fought sometimes, not often. Money mostly. Tourism had been slow the past year. He worked hard, picked up extra bookings, sometimes took sunrise and sunset tours back to back. Ayu asked him once if he wanted to go back to his family in Java for a while, just to reset. He said no. This was home. This was where they were building something. But building what? He couldn't see the shape anymore. One evening, after a long day guiding German honeymooners through the Ubud rice terraces, he came back, exhausted and sunburned. The lights in their room were off. Ayu wasn't there. He figured she was still at the spa. But as he passed Ardi's door, he heard laughter, 2 voices. Ayu's was one of them. It was unmistakable. He didn't stop. He didn't eavesdrop. He kept walking. The tiles felt colder than usual under his feet. Later that night, she came back smelling faintly of curry and lemongrass. Said she'd eaten with coworkers. Smiled like always. Tired, but soft. He wanted to ask, but instead, he kissed her on the cheek and poured her water. Raka had a habit. Every morning, before leaving for a tour, he made 2 cups of coffee. 1 black, for him, 1 sweetened, for Ayu. It was a ritual, something grounding. But slowly, she stopped drinking hers. Said it made her jittery. Switched to tea. So he started making only 1 cup. The day he gave up that habit, he stood alone in the kitchen staring at the 2 mismatched mugs. He didn't cry, but something inside him sighed. It was around this time that he noticed Ayu stopped asking about his day. Her questions became automatic, her goodbyes shorter. She no longer kissed his shoulder when she passed behind him, no longer sat beside him during their evening meals. He told himself it was stress. Work, the heat, anything. But stress doesn't smell like sandalwood and cologne. Some nights, the noises from Ardi's room returned. Not laughter this time, something slower, rhythmic, intimate. Raka lay still, listening. He hated himself for listening, for wondering, for imagining things he couldn't see but could feel. Painfully, in his chest, the thin walls offered no secrets. Only truths whispered too softly to confront. He still remembered the day he moved in. The landlady had joked, "This place is not for secrets. Pack Raka. If you sneeze, the neighbor blesses you. If you cry, the whole block knows." He'd laughed, thought it was charming. Now he wondered if everyone had known before him. Maybe they still did. He started walking by the beach more, even on days off, watching the fishermen, the stray dogs, the slow fade of sunlight into orange. He told himself he was just tired. He told himself he was imagining things. He told himself everything but the truth. Because if he said it out loud, even in his mind, it would become real. My wife might be cheating on me. With my cousin. In the room next door. Raka had always believed that love, once given, was a home, something you protect, something you don't burn down just because the lights flicker. But now he wasn't sure if he was in a home, or the ruins of one he hadn't realized collapsed. He still smiled, still worked, still told stories about sea spirits and moon rituals. But the sparkle in his voice dulled. He wasn't broken, but he was bending, and one more weight, just one, might snap something inside him for good. He didn't know that the weight was already there, waiting, quietly, on the other side of a paper-thin wall. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough to lose sleep. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. The group tour had ended early due to sudden rain. Raka, soaked and a little grateful for the cancellation, returned home before sunset. The air smelled of wet sand and exhaust, and the pitter-patter of rain over the tin roofs offered a kind of music he hadn't heard in a while. As he turned the corner into the alley that led to the boarding house, he spotted something familiar. 2 pairs of sandals neatly placed outside his cousin Ardi's room. One of them had brown straps with tiny floral etchings, the sole worn at the heel. He'd bought them for Ayu last year during a market trip in Ubud. She loved them, wore them nearly every day. Raka froze. It wasn't instinctual rage or cinematic heartbreak. Just stillness, confusion, like a part of him had stepped outside his body to observe quietly. Maybe, he reasoned, Ayu had lent the sandals to someone. Maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe, but then he heard it. A laugh. And then a voice that didn't need identifying. Ayu. Inside Ardi's room, behind the wall that connected them. Talking, laughing in that slightly breathy, hushed way she used when she felt playful. Then came Ardi's voice. Deeper, closer. They weren't arguing. They weren't whispering in distress. They were comfortable. Raka stood for a full minute, pretending to adjust the strap of his backpack. Anyone watching would think he was just fumbling with something. But inside, he was grasping at something more fragile. Clarity. He didn't knock. He didn't call her name. He simply turned and walked to his room, locked the door, and sat down on the edge of the bed, rainwater dripping from his sleeves onto the tiled floor. That night, he couldn't sleep. The storm had passed, but his thoughts stayed turbulent. Every squeak of the floorboard next door, every creak of furniture, became a dialogue in his head. He imagined scenarios, confrontations, denials, slaps, shouting, but none of it came. The silence of reality was crueler than anything he could invent. Around 2 a.m., he picked up Ayu's phone while she was in the bathroom. His hands trembled. He hated himself for doing it. He searched quickly, messages, recent calls, photo galleries, nothing. Clean, almost too clean. He placed it back before she came out. She didn't notice. Later that week, He tried again. This time he checked her phone while she was massaging oil into her legs by the window. Still nothing. No evidence. Just work chats, group conversations, cooking recipes. That only made it worse. What hurt Raka most wasn't just the possibility of betrayal. It was the sheer normalcy of her behavior. She wasn't acting like someone caught in a lie. She kissed him goodbye in the morning, sent him photos of her lunch, asked if he wanted dessert from the warung near the spa. But the sandals had been there. And the laugh was hers. He tried to explain it away in his own head. Maybe she stopped by to talk to Ardi. Maybe Ardi had a friend over, and she just dropped something off. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she just wanted a change of scenery, a better mirror, a stronger fan. But mirrors don't make people laugh like that. And fans don't close doors behind you. One morning, he asked her casually, "Did you see Ardi recently?" She paused. Not really. Why?" He smiled, shrugged. "Just thought I heard you two talking the other day." Ayu's face didn't flinch. "Oh, that, yeah, I dropped off his charger. He said his stopped working." Smooth, almost rehearsed. Raka nodded, said nothing more, but the explanation sat in his chest like a fishbone he couldn't swallow. Days passed like water slipping through fingers. His world remained intact on the outside, but everything internal was cracking. Raka started noticing small things. Ayu spending longer in the bathroom. Her scent shifting. Less of the jasmine oil he was used to. More sandalwood, more musk. One evening, Ayu was taking a shower. Her phone was on silent. Left on the pillow. Raka stared at it for 10 minutes. Debating. He picked it up. Still nothing. But this time, he noticed a recently deleted folder in the photo gallery. It was empty. Completely. He put the phone back. That night, she curled up next to him like always. Pressed her face into his back. He didn't move. His eyes remained open, tracing the ceiling fan's slow rotations. He wanted to believe her. But belief was becoming a form of self-abuse. When you start questioning what you see with your own eyes, just to protect what you feel, you begin to rot from the inside. And Raka was rotting. Silently. No confrontation, no breakdown, just quiet decay, like wood eaten by salt and time. That night, as the waves crashed distantly against the rocks, Raka whispered to no one, "She's slipping away, and I don't know if I want to pull her back or let her fall." I didn't need a private investigator. I just had to listen, and eventually, the whole boarding house spoke for me. Raka stopped sleeping properly. His body lay down, but his mind never followed. Doubt had become his mattress. Silence, his blanket. He moved like a man haunted, not by ghosts, but by the near certainty that the life he thought he had was only true in his head. One morning, while Ayu was at work, he placed a tiny, motion-activated camera above the kitchen doorframe. It was cheap and discreet, hidden inside a repurposed incense box. He felt sick doing it. Dirty, but not as dirty as being lied to. He didn't check it for a week. When he finally did, he watched the footage in small chunks, cataloging her movements. Monday, home alone. Tuesday, out from 2:12 p.m. to 3:37 p.m. Wednesday, gone again. This time 1:45 p.m. to 3:20 p.m. The timestamps repeated. Same windows, different days, and always, Ardi would be seen passing by during that window, sometimes entering his room, sometimes lingering by the shared corridor. Ayu never said she was going anywhere those afternoons. When Raka asked, she'd say, "I was doing laundry," or, "I stopped by the market," or, "just needed a walk." But the market was in the other direction. He started writing things down. Notes on scrap paper. Names, times, smells, a catalogue of cracks. At night, he would sit with his back to the thin wall and close his eyes. Sometimes, it was music. Other times, it was laughter. Once, it was a thump, then silence, then a low hum like a voice pressed too close to a neck. He couldn't prove anything yet. But proof no longer felt necessary. One afternoon, he stayed home, called in sick, sat quietly, door locked, fan off, Every sound became magnified. At 2:07 p.m., he heard the soft creak of Ardi's door. At 2:11 p.m., the click of Ayu's sandals. He closed his eyes. At 2:19 p.m., a laugh. Not loud, but hers. At 3:32 p.m., the sandals returned. That night, Ayu said her spa shift had gone long, that she was tired, that she wanted soup. Raka nodded, made the soup, didn't speak, didn't eat. He didn't need a fight. He needed air. The next day, he took a different approach. Not technology, not walls, people. There was a retired woman, Bu Shri, who had lived at the end of the corridor for over 20 years. Kind eyes, always wore loose floral blouses. She used to give Raka rice cakes as a boy. He brought her bananas and asked how she was. After some pleasantries, he asked, casually, "Have you seen Ayu around much these days?" The old woman looked at him for a beat too long. "Why do you ask?" He smiled, just wondering. She hesitated, then sighed. "Raka, this place has ears. Walls made of old paper. We all know what goes on. We've known for a while." He blinked. "Known what? You're not stupid, son. You've just been trying not to see it." She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Another neighbor, a young man named Dino, said in passing. "Man, I thought you knew. She's always over there. We just assumed it was open or something." Open. Raka wanted to laugh. Instead, he thanked him and walked away. The worst betrayal wasn't just Ayu's. It was realizing he had become the last to know. That while he tried to protect her dignity, while he tied himself in knots to avoid suspicion, everyone else had already moved past the question of if. Now they were just watching him, pitying him. That night, he replayed conversations in his head. Clipped memories. That time she said she needed space. That time she wore makeup at home when he wasn't going out with her. That one evening she smiled at a message and locked her screen before he could glance. He remembered the name she used to mention, Rani, a co-worker at the spa. She had said Rani needed help moving, that she was visiting Rani's place. He had even offered to drive her once. But she said no. He thought of that, pulled up Rani's name in Ayu's contacts. There were messages, sure, but short ones, sparse. Then he realized something chilling. Rani had been Ayu's excuse. But she hadn't posted anything for months. He searched for her account online. Found it. She was in Jakarta now. Had moved months ago. Ayu had lied, not just once, systematically. He didn't confront her that night. Or the night after. He watched her sleep, counted the rise and fall of her breath. Wondered if guilt made her breathe faster. Or slower. He no longer needed to shout. Or throw things. Or even cry. Because now he knew. And now the question wasn't, is she cheating? It was, how long has she been treating me like a fool? By the end of that week, Raka stopped writing notes. He no longer needed to prove anything to himself. The only thing left was to decide when to stop pretending he didn't know. And how, exactly, he wanted the pretending to end. I didn't knock, I just stood outside, and let them slip in their own mess. It was a Wednesday. The sun had already dipped low over the rooftops, casting a muted orange across the corridor walls. Raka had ended his tour earlier than expected. He told no one he was coming home. Not Ayu, not Ardi, especially not them. As he parked his scooter quietly, his footsteps fell softer than usual. The boarding house smelled like burnt shallots and clove cigarettes. It was oddly still, no karaoke, no TV blaring, just the sound of someone humming behind a closed door. A familiar tone, faint, female. Ardi's door. It wasn't locked. Raka didn't touch the knob at first. He just stood there, listening. There were muffled giggles, water dripping in a bathroom, then the unmistakable creak of a bedframe shifting under weight. Two shadows moved behind the curtain. He didn't brace himself. He didn't prepare for a scene. He pushed the door gently. It opened. Ardi stood shirtless, frozen, as if someone had cut power to his entire system. His eyes widened, not with guilt, but with fear, the kind of fear that knows the damage is already done. And Ayu, his Ayu, stood behind him in nothing but a damp towel. Hair wet, eyes rimmed in eyeliner she no longer wore for Raka. Her mouth parted, unsure if she should speak or hide. She chose neither, she just stared. Raka didn't yell, didn't break anything, he didn't ask why. He looked once, then turned, and walked out. The entire confrontation lasted less than a minute. But time had nothing to do with it. Some truths arrive without drama. They settle into your bones before they ever reach your ears. He walked to his room, picked up his backpack, the same one he used for tours, and placed his documents inside. His passport, his ID, a small envelope containing a legal copy of the boarding house property deed, the one he had planned to co-invest in with Ayu. Something he now saw as a sad joke. Then came the footsteps. Barefoot, fast. Aku bisa jelasan. Ayu's voice cracked. I can explain. Raka didn't stop folding his shirt. I didn't plan it like this. Raka, it just happened. We were alone a lot. And you were always busy. He looked up. Her face was streaked with tears. Real ones. But not all real tears are innocent. I didn't mean to hurt you. She whispered. You didn't mean to get caught. He said, calm, detached. Ardi appeared behind her, wearing his shirt now, but shame cannot be hidden by fabric. I thought you were family. Raka said, not to him, but to the air. I trusted you both more than I trusted my own doubts. Ardi opened his mouth, then closed it, like a man drowning and realizing there's no point screaming. Raka zipped his bag, walked past them without a final glance. No theatrics, no insults. Ayu called after him again. Please don't leave like this. You can't just disappear. He paused at the threshold. I already did, he said, you just never noticed. And he left. No neighbors peeked out, but he knew they heard it all. The corridor had always listened. That night, Raka checked into a cheap hostel on the other side of town. No windows, no ocean breeze, just 4 cement walls and silence he could finally own. He lay on the bed staring at the ceiling fan. He felt nothing, no anger, no heartbreak, not even betrayal, just relief. Because the worst part wasn't the moment he walked in. It was every moment before, when he had to pretend not to know. And now he didn't have to pretend anymore. 2 years later, I came back. They were still there, but this time, I owned the place. Java had no ocean, but it had silence, and that was all Raka needed. After leaving Bali, he disappeared into the folds of a quieter life, working for a small ecotourism company in the mountains, guiding visitors through volcanic trails and jungle paths. No more couples, no more sea, no more ghosts that whispered through thin walls at night. He deleted his old social media accounts, changed his number, lived lean and quiet. If anyone from the boarding house tried to find him, they'd find nothing but shadows. But every night, as he lay beneath his mosquito net and stared at the timber beams overhead, a single image returned: Ayu's damp hair, Ardi's downcast eyes, that unlocked door. The wound didn't bleed anymore, but it never healed, so he made a decision. He began saving, every commission, every bonus, every cent from private guiding gigs. He took short contracts for more pay and longer hours. He didn't need comfort, he needed closure, and when he was ready, he returned to Bali, quietly, under a new name, through a proxy investor. It took months of negotiation, paperwork, and watching from afar. But eventually, he did it. He bought the boarding house. All of it. The same row of sun-faded doors. The same narrow alley. The same scent of fried rice and sea breeze. The same peeling walls and whisper-thin partitions that had once carried laughter and betrayal to his ears. But now, it was his. He didn't renovate it, not fully. He left the cracks, the chipped tiles, the weak hinges, because they were honest. He let the current tenants stay. But all new leases went through a management company he controlled from behind the scenes. Raka never showed his face. He didn't need to. Ayu and Ardi were still there. They had changed names, rented under aliases, perhaps thinking anonymity would protect them. But he recognized the handwriting on the rental form. Ayu still curled her A's the same way. They lived in the same unit. The one next to the one that used to be his. Poetic. Really, he didn't evict them, that would be too loud. Instead, he slowly raised their rent, only theirs. Imposed stricter terms, limited their utilities, installed curfews, requested property inspections during inconvenient hours. No warnings, just policies, just the kind of policies they couldn't argue with without exposing who they really were. The corridor remained quiet, no one suspected a thing. Raka never walked past the door, never showed up for inspections. He operated everything through a staff member, a young, overly polite manager who carried out instructions without question. But he imagined them, each time a new memo arrived. Reading it, wondering, feeling the pressure, day by day. Ayu probably knew, eventually, she had always been clever. But Adi, he had always relied on luck. One day, the manager informed Raka that the tenants of Unit 3, Ayu and Adi, had asked about transferring to a different property. Preferably one farther away. The tone of the email was neutral. But Raka read between every line. They were suffocating, just like he once did. He approved the transfer without delay. Didn't charge a cancellation fee. Didn't even say goodbye. The night after they left, Raka returned to the boarding house for the first time in person. It was just past midnight. The moon cast long shadows across the corridor. He walked slowly, touching the door frames, counting them. When he reached the wall, the one that had once separated his room from Adi's, he placed his hand against it. Thin as always, but it no longer mattered. He no longer lived there. He owned it. Raka didn't smile, he didn't cry, he just stood for a moment, breathing in the sea air that once carried their lies. It smelled like salt and memory. He whispered to no one, "I don't need him to apologize." His hand pressed flat to the wall. "I just need him to know, this wall belongs to me now."